Black Mage is the weirdest job in Final Fantasy XIV, and while it used to be considered the hardest job in the game, Dawntrail has made it way easier to play. So, here's a beginner's guide to Black Mage.
Black Mage starts off at level 1, and to be honest, it's pretty boring until you hit level 60. So boring that I personally would recommend buying a job skip potion, if it didn't cost $25. So if you're a broke boy, here's what you need to know. I want you to add these 3 spells to your hotbar. All you need to know right now is this. Fire spells use MP, ice spells recover MP. So because of this, your fire spells do a lot more damage than your ice spells. At 20, your combo looks a little like this. Use Fire 1 until you run out of MP. Then use Transpose. Now use Blizzard 1 to recover your MP. Then you can Transpose again and repeat with Fire 1. It's that simple, and all you really need to do until you hit level 35. There's some other stuff going on as well, but I don't want to complicate anything right now. So I will explain this later in the video. At 35, you get 2 really important spells, so let's talk about them. Blizzard 3 and Fire 3 have only one purpose. It's to make Transpose useless, and that's not even a joke. So at 35, your combo looks a little something like this. Do the combo as normal, but instead of Transpose, use either Blizzard 3 or Fire 3. And that's it! Another thing that happens is your Fire 1 spell can now randomly give you a free Fire 3 that uses no MP. This is huge because Fire 3 costs 4000 MP, which means you should only use it when it's flashing, or if you're in the ice phase, trying to get back into the fire phase. This is all really straightforward, but before I can continue, I need to talk about the phases. So this gauge at the moment only does one thing. It tells you if you are in ice phase, which is shown by these blue balls, or in fire phase, which is shown by red balls. All you need to know is when either of these are lit, you're doing 80% more damage. This is the most important thing about Black Mage, and once you can go an entire raid in current content without dropping fire or ice, you will have mastered Black Mage. Black Mage used to have this one thing called Enochian. It doesn't exist anymore, so you can just ask the Black Mage main in your FC what that was, and you can expect a 30-minute rant from them. So I won't complicate things by talking about that, and instead, I want to talk about how you can avoid dropping your gauge. Luckily for you, it's really simple, because I already taught you that. Remember how I told you to use Transpose in the beginning of the video? The point of that is so you don't drop the buff, because check this out. If you are in fire phase, and use Blizzard 1, look at what happens to your gauge. You drop your 80% damage buff. It's right there on the floor next to the Dragoon who flipped off the stage and fucking died again. Don't worry, it will happen to you at some point. So if it does happen, just use Blizzard 1 to go back into the ice phase and start your combo again. All you need to remember is when you want to switch from fire to ice, only use Fire 3 or Blizzard 3. After that, nothing really happens until level 50, so let's talk about Flare. Flare is really important and does one thing and one thing only. It's your big boom to end your combo. So do your combo as normal, but before you switch to ice phase, use Flare to end your combo. Just keep in mind that Flare will eat up all of your MP, but you can only use it if you have at least 800 MP. And that is pretty much the basics of Black Mage. You want to spend as much time in fire as you can and as little time in ice. At 58, you get another big spell, and the first addition to your gauge. Add Blizzard 4 to your hotbar, and look at what happens to your gauge when you cast it. You get these 3 flashing blue things called Umbral Hearts. What these do is make your fire spells only cost half the usual MP, which means you can stay in fire for a little bit longer. And then at 60, something wild happens, because you can just forget the entire combo that I taught you. I'm not joking. At 60, your single target combo is completely different. And it's all because of your new spell, Fire 4. So add it to your hotbar. Fire 4 is the most important spell in the Black Mage toolkit. And your new job as a Black Mage is to use as many Fire 4s as possible. So this is what your combo at 60 will look like. Always start with Blizzard 3 and Blizzard 4. Then use Fire 3 to go into Fire phase and spam Fire 4 as much as you can. Then repeat Blizzard 3. At level 66, you get this spell called Triple Cast. which marks the level that I believe makes Black Mage feel amazing to play. What this does is give you 3 spells that you can use with no wait time. This is useful to do more damage quicker, or so you can use Fire 4 while moving around, because if you move, it will stop casting. It's crazy how powerful Black Mage is by the end of Stormblood. At 70, you get a new addition to your gauge. Foul is an AOE attack that does double the damage of Fire 4. And the way you get it is simple. You just have to wait 30 seconds. If you look at your gauge, there is now a 30-second timer that starts ticking, and once it gets to the bottom, it gives you 1 crystal the game calls a polyglot. So at level 70, your combo is still the same, but somewhere in between use triple cast to make everything go faster. At level 80, not much changes, but you get 2 new spells to add to your combo. Despair at 72 is the single target version of Flare. So you use Fire 4 until you can't no more. Then Despair instead of Flare to finish it off. And at 80, you get Xenoglossy, which is just the single target version of Foul, and to this day, the strongest attack that Black Mage ever had. You also get a second Polyglot charge. In Endwalker, not much was added to Black Mage. At 86, you get Amplifier, which gives you a free Polyglot, and at 90, you get this attack called Paradox. You get this whenever you switch phases, and it does tons of damage, so use it every time. You also don't need to add anything to your hotbar since it automatically changes Fire 1 and Blizzard 1. At 100, Black Mage gets Flare Star and this new gauge, so add it to your hotbar. The way this works is every time you cast Fire 4, one of these arrows will light up. Once they're all lit, you can now cast Flare Star. Luckily for you, the combo that I showed you will always fill up this gauge. And that's pretty much it for your combo at level 100. To recap, start with Blizzard 3, then Blizzard 4, Paradox, then Fire 3, and then Fire 4 to fill up your star gauge. Then use Despair and end with Flare Star. Then you can use Blizzard 3 and repeat the combo. Now real quick, I want to talk about some other spells that I didn't want to mention before but are still important. At level 6, you get Thunder, which is your dot. Think of it like a poison spell since it does damage over time. At level 45, it upgrades to Thunder 3, and at 92, it becomes High Thunder. All you need to know about Thunder is every time you switch from fire to ice, it will start flashing, which means you can use it. So click it whenever you see it flashing and you will never have to worry about it. The second is Swift Cast, which lets you cast any spell instantly. It also stacks with triple cast, which means you can cast Fire 4 4 times in a row with no wait time. Next, let's talk about everyone's favorite ability, Ley Lines. Ley Lines is Black Mage's situationship, because you love it, but it can also hurt you sometimes. All you need to know is this is a buff that leaves a spinning circle on the ground, and while you stand on it, it makes all of your spells cast 15% faster. The only downside is if you step out of the circle, you will lose that buff. But at 62, you get the perfect spell to help with this, because Between the Lines allows you to instantly travel back into your ley line. And at 50, you get the ability Ethereal Manipulation, which allows you to instantly travel next to a party member. So use these two to move around the boss when needed. At 96, you get a spell called Retrace. This allows you to move your ley lines underneath you. So if it's too dangerous to use Between the Lines, just use Retrace. And then there's Manafont, which I consider Black Mage's best friend. What this does is restore all your MPs to 100%, which means once you finish your fire combo, you can use Manafont to instantly get your MP back. And then you can do your fire combo a second time. This is incredibly powerful, so make sure to use this every single time you get it. And last, I want to talk about Lucid Dreaming. This spell is pretty much useless on Black Mage, so don't even bother with having it on your hotbar. Same with Skate. Now let's talk about your AOE combo. And luckily for us, it's really simple. Add Fire 2 and Blizzard 2 to your hotbar. When you are under 50, all you're going to do is use Fire 2 until you run out of MP. Then use Blizzard 2 until you regain your MP. Then when you hit level 50, you get Flare and Freeze, so add those two to your hotbar. What I like to do is start with Blizzard 2 and Freeze, then Fire 2 and Flare, then repeat. And to be honest, that's pretty much it until you hit level 100, because the only other attacks you get, we've already covered.
At 70, you get Foul, which is an attack you can use every 30 seconds with a polyglot. And then at 100, you get Flare Star. But it's a little different for your AoE combo since we won't be using Fire 4. So at 100, use Flare, and look at what happens to your Astro Gauge. You get half the gauge filled up. But remember when I told you earlier that Flare uses up all your MP? Well, that's not entirely true, because at level 58, you get access to Umbral Hearts, which reduce your spell cost by half. And when you use the freeze spell, it will give you 3 Umbral Hearts. So by level 58, your combo looks like this. Blizzard 2, then Freeze to get your 3 hearts. Then Fire 2 to get into the Fire phase, and then use Flare twice. The first Flare won't eat up your MP because of the Umbral Hearts, so you will be able to use Flare again to eat up the remaining MP. So by the time you get to level 100, if you do my combo, you will now be able to use Flare Star to end your combo. Just remember you need to cast Flare twice during Fire phase in order to use Flare Star. And honestly, that's it. Black Mage is definitely a weird job, mainly because of how often it changes. Like for example, at level 82, Fire 2 randomly changes into High Fire 2, and Blizzard 2 changes into High Blizzard 2. On paper, Black Mage is super complicated, which makes sense since it's Yoshi P's main job. But once you understand the mechanics, it's pretty straightforward, and you will constantly be at the top of the DPS chart. Lastly, let's talk about something called slide casting. Without getting too technical, if you move while casting, you'll normally interrupt the spell. But if you start moving once your cast bar is about 80% complete, the spell will still go off without being interrupted. This all comes down to timing, so just mess around with it in game until you can master it. And you're done! Hopefully this guide was easy to follow. I know it's a lot of information, but there is a reason that Black Mage is one of the strongest jobs in the game. You probably won't master this overnight, but if you can make it through the grueling leveling process, you will also fall in love with the job that brings the boom.